What's going on, YouTube? Westhobbiesrc. So today we are back with the SAB ILgoblin Pro, part 2 of the build series. So in part 1, we got it to where you see it sitting on its skids. Part 2, we're going to finish this thing up. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let's get started. First thing we are going to do is assemble our tail. So we have everything laid out here: our blade grips, tail shaft, spindle, main shaft, slider, all of our parts over here for the slider. So I have everything laid out here in the way that it goes. So smaller ID of your thrust bearing, your bearing, I already greased them with micro lube. Larger ID, shim, O-ring. So we are going to assemble it in that order. So we're going to take our smaller ID, we're going to slide it on the shaft. We're going to take our thrust bearing, open and out, larger ID, sandwich those two together. Then we're going to take this shim, slide it down. Now we are ready to drop this assembly into our tail grip. So you're just going to drop it down into there. You might have to wiggle everything around, and then I just like to kind of tap it into place. Use my driver to wipe off any excess grease that might get into the threads. That one is done. So we're going to do the exact same on the other one. So again, smaller ID, thrust bearing, open and out, larger ID, shim, grab your blade grip, and slide the entire assembly down inside. Give it a couple taps to make sure it's sitting in there flush. This one is not, so we want to get it flush. Spin it around, make sure that we got all that grease off. Now our blade grips are done, and we're going to take our shaft, take our O-rings. I like to wipe them in micro lube as well, just a thin coat. You kind of see just a little bit of grease on them. Take our second O-ring, slide it down into place, come back with our spindle, tail shaft, push it into place, kind of make sure you don't pop that O-ring out. Pop that O-ring back in with your fingernail. And we want to try to get even. Then we're going to take this shim here. We're going to slide that guy onto there like that. We're going to flip it over. We're going to take this one, slide it down there like that. So now that that is done, we can come back and install our blade grips. We're going to do one at a time. We're going to take it. I like to do it straight up so I don't push any of the bearings out. And just kind of wiggle that into place. It fell right in perfectly. So I'm going to take my 2.5mm driver, Loctite already on my screw. I cleaned my screws with rubbing alcohol. I'm going to get it started just till it stops and it starts to spin the other shaft. I'm going to flip it over and do the exact same on this side. Just going to hold it there, carefully wiggle it so you don't push it out the backside. And then come back with our other screw, 2.5mm driver, Loctite already applied. Run it down till it stops. And then you're going to use both of your 2.5mm drivers, and you're going to tighten this all the way down. Get it nice and tight. So we're going to lock it down. Now we're going to check and make sure it is smooth. It is. Now we are going to start assembling the pitch slider. So now for our pitch slider, we are going to take our links and we're going to pop these little plastic inserts into place. So you're just going to line them up, push them in just like that. And then we're going to come back with our pitch slider. We want the S to face up on this side. So S facing up on the left side. We're going to hold it into place. Come back, 1.5mm driver, retaining compound on the screw. Push that screw through to get it started, and then tighten this all the way up. Once we are done, let's make sure that this is still smooth. So as you build, make sure everything is smooth. Then we're going to come back with this guy, do the same thing, push the sleeve in. We're going to flip the unit over, make sure the S is facing up. So left side is always S facing up. 1.5mm driver, retaining compound on the screw. Get it started, tighten it down. Once you are done, make sure it is still smooth. Now that this is completely finished up, we're going to take a little bit of micro lube, put it on our shaft, and then we will slide that into place. But before we do that, we need to put our ball links on. So you're going to push that screw through. 1.5mm driver on this side, a little bit of retaining compound here. Once we have our retaining compound on there, we're going to take our ball end, we're going to screw that guy into place, 2mm driver on this side, and we're going to tighten it all the way up, just like this. And then we're going to do the exact same onto this grip, and then we can our tail slider on. So now that we have both ends on, both our ball ends, we have micro lube on our shaft. Now we can come back, take our pitch slider, and we are going to slide it into place. And we are going to pop our Ball ends on, making sure the S is facing out. So we're going to slide this one into here. I like to just line them up, get this one lined up, and then pop them both on at the same time. I find it easier to do it that way than trying to do one at a time, but sometimes it can be a pain. And then just pop them both on, just like that. Now everything is free and smooth, no binding, feels good. Now we can set this aside and start on the tail case. So the first thing we're gonna do is take our side plate, take our mount. You'll notice there's a lip. That lip faces down. It's gonna go into these two holes right here. So we are going to push that guy into place, hold it there, come back from the back side, 2mm driver, Loctite on our screw, and we're going to snug it up. Once we get that one snugged up, come back with our second 2mm driver, Loctite on the screw, and tighten both of these all the way up. Once you are finished with that, it'll look like this. And now we are going to take our tail shaft. We are going to slide the tail shaft into place. And you will notice there is a little cutout, a little divot in the shaft. That is for the set screw. So we're going to take our tail pulley and we're going to slide it in. We want that set screw to face this bearing flange. So we're going to slide that to where that lines up with that divot in the shaft. That is going to hold it into place and give you a tight bond onto the shaft. 2mm driver, retaining compound on the screw. We're going to get it started, and then we're going to test to feel that we are in that flat spot. So before it goes all the way tight, you can feel it. You can rock the shaft back and forth. You can feel that it's in there. We know it's in there. We know it's good. So now we can tighten this all the way up. And then we're going to come back with a little bit of rubbing alcohol on a paper towel. And we're just going to clean that excess retaining compound off just to give us a nice clean finish. So now we are going to assemble the bell crank. So now on the bell crank, you will notice SAB. You want that to face you and up. We're going to come back, 2mm driver, Loctite on our screw. We're going to put our ball into here. We're going to tighten this all the way down. Once that is tightened down, now we are going to come back with a 1.5mm driver, retaining compound on the screw, go in from the top, where that white line is on the bottom. We want to put our ball end onto that now, 2mm driver, just like we did with the tail blade grips, tighten it down. Now that we are done with that, we are going to come back with our screw. We're going to slide it in from the bottom. Sometimes I like to hold it here like this, a little bit of pressure. I take a small driver and I put that sleeve in, kind of wiggle it around and then push the screw up. And they are not calling for any retaining compound. I'm going to add some retaining compound on this right here, just a little bit on the threads. We are going to insert this guy, get it started, and then this ball end is going to slide into here like this. Now we're going to run this down till it starts to poke through. Then we are going to insert our 5.5mm nut on the back side, get that nut started, and then I'm going to hold it with my 5.5mm wrench, and I'm going to use a 2.5mm driver to tighten this down. So I'm going to come in from this side, 2.5mm driver. I'm going to tighten it all the way down, and then I'll finish tightening the nut if need be. So now that is tightened up. That nut isn't all the way, so now I'm going to come back and tighten this nut the rest of the way up. Now our tail is completed, so now we can start on the other side and get the belt on. So now we are going to assemble the left side of the tail casing, which is this carbon fiber plate here. So now on this plate, you're going to look at it, this side where it dips down is the bottom of the plate. So it's going to go onto the tail like this. So your bearing's going to go in, bottom of the plate down. So we're going to take our bearing block, and you will notice that it is flanged. So we want the flat side of the bearing that you can see sticking up or out, and then we want to line our bolt holes up, push that bearing into place while you line them screws up. And once you get it to kind of fit in, you can just kind of push it in place. And we're going to come back from the outside, and we are going to get our 1.5mm driver, Loctite on our screw. We are going to get one screw started just to kind of line it all up. Come back with our second 1.5mm driver, Loctite on the screw, get it started. That will help with getting the bearing all in its place. Then we're going to come back with our last 1.5mm screw, Loctite applied, get that screw started, and then we're going to tighten all 3 screws up evenly and make sure that the bearing is sitting flat on this piece of carbon. So just take a look at it. That looks good. So now we are going to put our cross spar across, the one in the back. You'll notice it is countersunk, 2mm driver, Loctite on the screw. Get that guy started, tighten it all the way up, and then we can slide the other half of the tail casing in place. So now turn that down. That is done. Now we're going to take our tail belt, and we're just going to lay our tail belt like this. Then we're going to take this side of the tail casing, and we're just going to drop it into place, and then it'll line up right here with that screw hole. So we are going to come back with a second screw that fits on that side with our 2mm driver, Loctite on our screw, and then we are going to run it down into that hole. So now I'm going to push this together, kind of move that out of my way, get that screw started, tighten this screw up. Now that that is done, our tail casing is half assembled, so we can make sure our belt is in that pulley there, and then just kind of pull that belt forward just like that. So now we're going to come back with this bracket that goes in between, SAB forward, the cutout towards the pulley. That is going to slide into these 2 holes here and here, and this 2 holes here and here. So we want to get that guy slid into place. We want to line it up to where our screw holes are sticking through. Then we're going to take our tail fin, and we want our tail fin to lay into place just like this. Now we are going to come back with our 2.5mm driver, Loctite on our screw. We're going to get 1 screw started just to hold everything into place. Then we're going to come back with our second screw. We want to make sure that we line this little guy up, get it all lined up, get it started. We'll make sure that all of this is the way we need it. So now we can tighten both of these all the way down. And then we'll come in from the other side and put the last 2 screws in right here, and right there. So now that we're tightening that last screw up, we're just going to double check both of those are done. Those 2 screws are in. Our tail casing is complete. So now we can grab our tail boom and get the casing on the boom. So now for the tail boom, we need to first put on the inside and outside. So the one with the nuts on the ends is the inside. That is going to sit down in here like this, and it is going to be sandwiched with this piece right here. They look like G10 plates, and that is going to go on there just like that. And then, of course, these little guys, like a regular Kraken, are the inside for the tail plate. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with one. So since I have this one in my hands, I'm going to grab one of these little double-sided foam pieces, and we're going to peel off one side of it just like that. Now, I'm going to show you one, and then they're all the same. So what I want to do is I want to line up the middle hole first. So I'm going to line up my middle hole, check on my outside holes. That all looks good. Push that down. Now I'm not going to peel this side yet. Then I'm going to do the same for this one. And then you're going to do them all the same exact way. So I'm going to peel off half of my double-sided tape here, leaving one half still covered. So now I have this one ready to go. And I'm going to do the same exact idea. I'm going to line up the middle hole first, flat side, just like that. Make sure our outside holes are lined up, push it down. Now go ahead, do the other ones and the back tail plates. So now that I have all my plates ready, I'm gonna show you one side, and then we're gonna do the exact same on the other side. This is the outside plate here, okay? So this is gonna go down here just like this. So this is how I do it to make it easier and to line it up. You're going to peel off the one side that you still have on. Then we're going to come back with 2 out of the 3 screws. You could actually use all 3. We're going to drop all 3 into here. And then we are going to carefully, holding it up, make sure all 3 screws fall down into place. They do. And we're going to push it down. Now that assures that everything is lined up. So now for the inside, it's going to be the same thing, a little bit trickier. We are going to peel the double-sided tape. We're going to start with the middle screw. So we're going to kind of lay that down in there, keeping it off. And I'm going to just line it up until it gets started onto my lock nut inside. Trying to do it without getting it stuck down, which can be a little bit of a pain. Probably easier just to do it. There we go. Start it by hand. Okay, and then we're gonna do the same on the outside. Get that guy started, and then do the same on this side. Get this guy started, and then now we're gonna tighten all 3 of these up and squish it all the way down. And then you can leave these screws in until you're ready to install onto the boom. So it'll be just like that. That's all the way tightened down. Now do the same on this side, and you're gonna do the exact same back here. You're just gonna be going to the inside just like that, screws from the outside. Same principle, so get all that done. So now we got both sides done. You can see here, these screws are just for this clamping. When you go to mount the boom, you'll see there's different screws. And then we also got the tail pieces in. Now these are your screws for your tail casing, so you'll pull these back out. I like to give it a few minutes and let this double-sided tape stick into place. So now what we're gonna do is we are going to mount the push rod guides, these little guys right here. So we want the S curve to be on this side of the boom. They're gonna go in there just like that. You're gonna come in with a 1.5 millimeter driver, and this can be a little bit tricky to do. You have to slide your screw through the hole here, clear out the paint, get it started, but you kind of have to hold the driver off of the boom unless you have like a really long one or a ballpoint driver, but it'll screw in very easily. So you kind of just hold it off like that once you get it started, and then tighten it down. And you're going to do that for this one and for this one. They both go the same way. So now that is done. We got both of them screwed on. So now we are going to insert the tail belt through the boom. Here's a quick little tip I've learned. If you just fold the belt over, take a little piece of painter's tape, masking tape, anything like that, just to give it that front little fold, it makes it easier to push the belt all the way through. No need for a guide wire or anything like that. So you literally just take it just like that. We're gonna go in from the back, and we're just going to push the tail belt all the way through the boom. It just makes it super simple. We'll straighten it out afterwards and make sure that it's got no twists or anything in it. And we'll see it come out the opposite side here in a second. And then we can finish pulling it through. So if you look down in here, there is the belt. There we go. Now I can finish pulling the belt through, come back to this end, make sure that the belt is routed properly. We're just gonna get this casing slid into place, just like that. There we go. So now we are going to go off of these 2 slots here and here. We're gonna take our 2.5 millimeter driver, same screws that we had in. We're gonna get one started. Once we get that one started, we're gonna come back with the second one, get it started. We're gonna put the other 2 in. Just don't tighten these down yet. We just want them to be able to slide back and forth, but hold the tail casing in place. So once you have all 4 screws in, not all the way tight so you can still slide this, we'll tighten this after we get the boom onto the helicopter. So now we can set this aside, take your painter's tape off the belt, and we are ready to start the tail servo into the mainframe. So now we are gonna start on the tail servo. One thing to mention real quick, measure from the bottom of your mounting tabs to the bottom of your servo. If it's 26 and under, you're gonna use the short mounts. If it is over 26, like 7, 8, 29, you're gonna use the longer mounts. They give you 2 different ones. Theta is 26 exactly, so we're gonna use the short mounts. So now what we're gonna do, I'm using the SAB horns, 1.5 millimeter driver, 18 millimeters, which is the center hole on this horn. I'm gonna start it, run this screw down till it stops. Then I'm gonna come in from the back side with a little bit of retaining compound. And we're gonna put some retaining compound on the threads, just like that. And we're gonna come back with a 2 millimeter driver, holding our 1.5 millimeter, and we're gonna get that ball end on there. And we're gonna tighten this all the way down, and our servo is now, our horn is now done. That is completed. Now we are gonna take our servo. When we are looking at it and we want the horn to face to the left, our servo is already 90 degrees. So there you can see like that. Then we're gonna come back, 2.5 millimeter driver, Loctite on the screw, and we're gonna get that guy started, tighten it all the way up. So now when the servo is sitting into the helicopter, it'll be like this, servo arm down. Use a little bit of rubbing alcohol, wipe off any excess. So now we are going to mount the servo tabs to the mainframe. So now we have our mainframe assembly here. We're on the left side of the helicopter. and we are going to go off of these 2 holes and these 2 holes, so 4 total. So we're going to grab our 26mm spacer blocks, open side towards the frame, the shorter side towards the servo, and we are going to come in with a 2mm driver, Loctite on our screw, beauty washer on our screw. We're going to get that one started, come back in with the bottom 2mm driver, Loctite already on the screw, get it started, and then we're going to tighten this all the way up, and we're going to do the same for the front mount, and then we can actually mount the servo itself. So that one is done. That's what it looks like. Now mount the front one. So that is what it'll look like. There's both of your tabs. Now the servo is going to come into here just like this. We're going to have to probably feed the servo wire through this hole, is going to be my guess, and then we'll wrap it up and around this way. So let me see if I can do that. So I'm going to take my servo wire, I'm going to feed it through that hole. There we go. Then that servo is going to sit down in there just like this. And then we are going to come in from the outside and put our screws in. So it's going to be hard to show on camera, but that's what we're going to do. And the way I'm doing it is I have my carbon fiber flat spacers, and then I have my Theta servo center plastic that come with it. That is going to push into the servo just like this, lock tight, and screw it all down. If you don't have those, just use your tabs and screw it all down. Make sure you lock tight your screws. Tail servo is now mounted. I ended up pulling the mounts back off, mounting the servo to them, and then putting it back into place and tightening it all down. Because if you have a small enough driver, you can go in from the outside, but it was just easier that way. I also routed the tail servo wire underneath and then up through the 2 included zip ties and on the frame, so it comes out over here. So now that that is all complete, now we can mount the boom. So now we are going to install the boom onto our helicopter, so it'll be a complete model. You're going to remove the 3 screws each side that you used to clamp these together. Those screws were used just for clamping, so you're not going to use those. You're now going to come back with the longer screws with the beauty washers for mounting the boom. Now, hold your boom, pull tight on the belt, look down inside here, make sure there's no twists. You're going to grab this belt, you're going to make 1 half rotation to the right. That is how you want the belt to sit, half rotation, no more. So now we are going to feed the boom and belt all through the helicopter just like that. Go under the canopy mounts, slide it forward, and you're going to reach under where the belt is, and you are going to get it put onto the tail pulley under the main bearing. Main pulley. So it's just like that. That is what it's going to look like. So now we can line up our holes, figure out where they need to go. 2mm driver. We're going to be going off of 3 screw holes, 1, 2, and 3. Line everything up. Get one, just start it. Come back, get the second one. Figure out where it's going to go. You might have to move it down, wiggle it up and down. Get it started. Come back with your third one. Get it started, and then do the exact same on the other side and tighten them all down. So once you get your last one tightened, go back through, tighten each side again, because as everything torques down, settles, the foam squishes a little bit that these are mounted on that double-sided foam, you'll want to just tighten it up. So now the boom is on the helicopter, our belt is on the main tail belt pulley. Look at your tail, spin the head counterclockwise, or clockwise, I'm sorry, spin the head clockwise, and the tail should go counterclockwise. So that is correct. Now we are going to set it aside. We are going to grab the tail belt tensioner and pulley. We're going to get that installed, and then we can tension our tail belt. So now we are going to assemble the tail belt tensioner. So the first thing we are going to assemble is the actual bearing, the pulley going onto this mount here, and then we'll assemble it into the tensioner itself. So now in order to do that, we're going to take our pulley and we're going to slide in from the bottom. And then we're going to take this shim, we're going to drop it right on top, just like that. So once that drops down into place, then we are going to take this little bracket here. It doesn't matter, it's the same on both sides. And we are going to put the spacer side up. We're just going to push it all into place, working it carefully. And you can see the countersunk side is up. 2mm driver, Loctite on our screw. And we're just going to get that guy started and tighten it all the way down. And then we're going to do the same for the bottom screw. So we're going to take the other side, 2mm driver, Loctite on our screw, tighten it all the way up. Now that it is done, this part is done, go ahead and make sure that it feels smooth and there's no binding or anything. So now we can take the tensioner itself and we need to slide this together like this, but we need to put a spring in the middle of it. Now what we're gonna take is a little bit of micro lube, and this is what I personally like to do. It tells you to add a little bit of grease. I'm just gonna inject a little bit of micro lube inside of this hole here, and I'm running out, so just like that. Then I'm gonna take my spring and I'm gonna work it down inside of there. I'm gonna work it through here so that grease gets all on the inside of everything. And now I'm gonna come back with my 1.5 millimeter driver, Loctite already on these little pins here. And then we're gonna push it till we get to the hole. It's hard to see on camera, but you can see it in there. And we are going to run this guy in, tighten it up. And we're gonna do the exact same on the bottom side. Loctite on our screw, run it down, and tighten it up. Now we'll just give it a pull, make sure it's in where it needs to go. It moves free and smooth. So now that is done, we can assemble the other one. Now this is just going to be a tensioner, like an idler tensioner. So this is gonna go together the same way, just without the spring. So we are going to slide this sleeve in from the bottom, just like that. We're gonna come back, shim on top, just like that. Then we're going to slide this assembly into place, line up our screw holes, 2 millimeter driver, Loctite on our screw, run it down and tighten it up. Once we have that one tightened up, now we can come back on the other side, Loctite on our screw, 2 millimeter driver, tighten that one all the way up. Now that is done, you should have both of them. You should have your tensioner side and your fixed side. So now we're gonna install these into the helicopter. Now we are on the left side facing us, nose is to the left, tail is to the right. We want to add the tensioner. So now our tail belt is super loose right now, and we are just going to bring this guy in. You're gonna kind of just walk it through this little cutout in the frame, and it's gonna sit right into place just like that. You wanna make sure the tensioner side, where you can read, is up. 2.5 millimeter driver, no Loctite on these screws because there is lock nuts, so you don't need any Loctite. We just want to snug that one up. Come back with our second 2.5 millimeter driver, tighten this screw down, and then you're going to tighten them both all the way up, and then we're going to move to the other side and do the other one. So now we are on the other side. This one is just going to sit flat against there, so you can look at it however you want to do it. We're going to put it in, follow the little curve of the frame, and then we are going to hold it with one hand, come back, 2.5 millimeter driver. Again, no Loctite because these are lock nuts. We're gonna run this one almost till it's tightened down. Just let it have a little bit of wiggle room. Come back with our second one and then tighten it both all the way up. Now that is tightened up, both sides are done. We can now tension the tail belt. So now for tensioning the tail belt, it's just like a cracking. Very simple to do. So you're gonna leave 2 of these screws loose. So I usually leave the back 2. I'm gonna pull my tail casing to where it's pretty much all the slack is out of the screw, out of the belt. And then I'm gonna run the front screw and I'm just gonna snug it up. And then you're gonna want to, you're twisting it. So you're grabbing the case, you're pulling it a little bit, tighten this screw, loosen this screw, and then you're working it all the way back. So I'm going to pull, give me a little bit of angle. I'm gonna tighten this front screw down here. I'm gonna come back to this side. I'm going to loosen this screw while giving it opposite pressure, the opposite direction. I'm gonna feel the belt and look at the tensioner. So the tensioner needs to be about -1. Now I'm gonna come back to this side, do the same thing. I'm holding pressure, loosening, tightening. Come back to this side, holding opposite pressure, loosening, tightening. Now, whenever you're done and you get all tensioned up, make sure that this tail box is 90 degrees. So your tail shaft is 90 degrees to your boom. And now that feels good right there. The tensioner shows -1. I'm happy with that. Now you're gonna go and tighten down these back 2 screws. And you can see here where my tensioner is at. It is right at -1. And I am happy with the tightness of the tail belt. It feels good, it's smooth, everything rotates like it should. So now we're going to assemble our push rod. This is the first time I've seen SAB do this. The ends are already glued, so both ends are done, which is a very nice thing, makes the build a lot faster. So we are going to take the little rods that go into the end, and we're going to add retaining compound to them So you're just going to take a little bit of retaining compound, get that guy started, and they are a regular right-handed thread. So that way when you go to tighten the ends on, they will not come loose. So we're going to tighten them all the way up. Once they're tightened all the way up, now we're going to take our rod end onto it, and we are going to get it started. And again, as you tighten this end, it's going to torque this down into place. So you don't have to worry about it coming loose. And then of course, once the retaining compound dries, it will be on there. So then we're going to turn it down, and we want an overall diameter of 810 millimeters from ball end to ball end. So get this one done, get the rod in, and make it up to around 810 millimeters. So I got the helicopter flipped over here, and we are going to install the tail push rod. So now my ends are on. We're going to start at the tail servo. So we're going to kind of hold it kitty cornered so that way we can pop it into the guides. So you might have to move the horn a little bit past the servo tray because you don't have a ton of room there. And we are just going to pop our ball end on right here first. And since we don't have a lot of room, we're just going to do it like this. We got that popped on. Now we're going to put our servo back to what we know 90 degrees is, which is right there. And then we're going to clip them in this way. And we're going to come back to the tail and make sure that we have our 2 to 4 degrees of positive tail. So now that we are at the tail here, one thing to pay attention to is the push rod end. See how it's open? That faces the ball closed side out. So make sure you've done that on the servo and down here at the tail rod. So we need to screw this in 1/2 of a turn. We know that our tail has 2 to 4 degrees of positive tail because I've already adjusted all this. And then now we are going to pop it onto here, just like that. And then now we are going to come and clip our push rod into the supports. Now our tail push rod is complete and we can move on to the bearing support. So now we have to take this third bearing support. We want the open side of the bearing to face down so it's ridged like this. We are going to come in, we are going to drop it down onto the shaft, and then we're just going to rotate it to where it pops right into place just like that. Then we're going to come in from the outside, 2.5 millimeter driver, Loctite on our screw with the beauty washer. We're going to get it snugged up. We're going to do 2 on each side. So you can see those screws there. We're going to come in from the other side, get those put into place, and then we can install the last little hex spacer that we have right here in the back. Our last thing that we got all that tightened down is we have to install this hex spacer. That spacer is going to go down until we can get to, there's a hole right here. There's a hole on each side right near this aluminum mount with the lock nut. That's where that spacer is going to go. So we are going to get it down into place. And you're going to have to kind of wiggle it down there, turn it sideways, and just push it. Once you get it into place, it'll fall right in and your threads will line up. 2.5 millimeter driver, Loctite on our screw. Get that one started. Don't tighten it all the way up yet. Come back from the other side with the last screw here. Get it started. And then once you get it run down, you can tighten both of them evenly. Sometimes you might have to wiggle that around just like that. And then now we can run this one all the way down. And then now we can tighten them both up. That way it doesn't spin. You can also use a wrench down in there. Now it is done. Let's flip it over and build the fly barless mount. Now for the fly barless mount, it's the same mount as all the SAB helicopters. They have the same exact design. So you have 2 different plates here. You have a flat long plate that goes like this. Then you have your actual fly barless plate that goes like this. So if you're using a separate receiver, you use this plate. I'm gonna use this plate because I'm gonna mount my capacitor backup pack to it. So that's gonna go there. 2.5 millimeter driver, get Loctite on that screw, get that screw started, come back with your next 2.5 millimeter driver, Loctite applied, get that screw started, and then there's gonna be a third one, tighten all 3 of those all the way up. So now that that is done, you can see here, we got all 3 of our screws in. Now we're gonna take our rubber dampeners, mounts, and I put Loctite on them, and then you're just gonna tighten these by hand. So there's 4 of them. So I just run it all the way down till it stops, and then I give it about, I don't know, quarter turn, lock it down, come back with my next one, do the same thing, run it all the way down till it stops, give it about a quarter turn, third one, same thing, run it all the way down, and then you'll do the same thing on the 4th one. So now that is done, and this is what it should look like. Now we are going to come back with our flat barless tray here, countersunk side up. It's going to lay down just like that. Then we're going to come back with our 2mm driver, Loctite on our screws, and we are going to put the 4 small countersunk screws into place. So you're just going to come in. I'll show you 2, 1 there, and then leave it loose because you see what happened here. I tightened it up and it walked sideways. So leave it loose so that way you don't put unnecessary tension on any of these rubber mounts and cause premature failure. Go ahead, tighten that one down. Now come back, tighten this corner down, and then you're going to put the other 2 into place. So now we have our flat barless mount completed. This is what it should look like. So now we're going to go off of 1 and 2 holes on each side. So we're going to lay the tray. We're going to have to feed this little tab down inside of here. So you might have to kind of walk this around just like that to get it all to fit. It's going to sit down there. We're going to come back, 2mm driver, Loctite on our screws, beauty washer on. We're going to have to kind of hold it up, get one started. Once we get one started, we can come back with our second one. We can get it started, and then you're going to tighten these 2 down and do the exact same on the other side. Now that that is done, I'm going to take rubbing alcohol on a paper towel. I'm going to wipe this mount off really, really good, because now we are going to start our wiring, and I'm going to start by mounting my V-Bar Evo here, and then start figuring out how I want to run all the wires. My V-Bar Evo is mounted, double-sided tape. I taped the antenna mount onto my elevator servo. Got the antennas loosely routed. Gonna come back with a little piece of heat shrink to help hold everything in place. But now we can go over how we're gonna run all of our wires, start covering them in heat shrink. Our tail servo wire is already up through the frame. So I'm gonna go over all that, figure out the best way to route it, show you how it looks when I'm done, and then we'll move on to mounting the canopy and all the little bits that you have to screw on. And the wiring is completed. So we have our fans wide together into our harness there for telemetry. We have our power wires going forward, our ESC wires going back up into our SAB guide. We have our servos nice and routed, and we're running back junctioned to the back of our FBL unit, all fabric painted into place. So it came out very clean. I think that looks pretty good. So now we can get the canopy finished up, mount what we have to do on that, throw the blades on this thing, and see what it looks like all finished up. So now on the canopy, these little inserts here already come screwed into place, as well as the bottom here. There's a little stop right there for it to rest, and this is for the anti-rotation. It helps keep the canopy in place. Very nice, of course, just like all SAB. So all we have to do is put down our canopy grommets, which go right here in these big holes, and they're these little rubber guys here. So how I like to do it is I just push them into place the best that I can with my hand, trying to kind of get them into where they go. Then I will come back with a small, like 1.5mm driver, and just carefully work that O-ring down into place. Once you can kind of fit it there, and then I'll just go around like that. Make sure it's pushed into place. Take your push lock, and then I like to use a little bit of 3-in-1 oil, silicone 3-in-1 oil, and I just put a dab on there, and that will help with it to fit in. Slides in very easily. Also helps with the lock. So now do the exact same for your other one, and the canopy is ready to mount. Got our blades tossed on, the orange SAB 702s. Those look phenomenal with the 110 orange tail blades. It came out really, really good. Now, one thing to note, the blade washers they recess, so you just push them up, they lock into place. No more fiddling with shoving a washer top and bottom. Very nice feature. Also, too, for the tail blades on the back, they give you this little washer right here, and that is so if the tail blades are loose inside here, that would go under this screw, but these feel great tightened up, so no need for them. So now let's get the canopy tossed on this thing and see what it looks like. Oh, does that look good? That orange looks phenomenal. That canopy fits really, really nicely with that little stop down there in the bottom. Locks it into place, as you can see right here. That little guide goes right into the anti-rotation, keeps the canopy perfectly centered, so that's a really nice touch. Wiring came out super clean. You don't see anything, which looks phenomenal. This thing came out great. The all-new ILgoblin Pro. Look at that. And these orange blades look phenomenal. So there you guys go. Part 2 of the SAB ILgoblin Pro. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. I am going to make a designated video on the battery tray. I was going to cover it in this video, but I want to make a separate video showing, explaining, and building one with you guys. So it'll be its own video, so look for that. I'm also going to make a setup video. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you haven't already, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Take care, and have a great day.